Pastor Dan, we're on the live church video since we canceled services. Hopefully you are home safe and able to catch this on Facebook. This is on the Wesleyan Church of Orchard Park page. So I know a few of you, I was trying to check out some things on my page just to play around with live videos. I'm not super familiar with that. And so hopefully those of you who were picking it up on my page have come over to the church page and can find it there. And I believe, Pastor Jason can straighten me out on this if I'm wrong, but I believe that we'll be able to have this up for some time after we're done today. So I see Pastor Jason and Nicole have joined, so welcome. And I anticipate that more of you will be joining us as we go along. This morning when I got up and drove up to the church around 5:30, 6 o'clock, real thankful. Justin Brandt was there plowing and did a great job cleaning the parking lot. But as I drove home, passed a couple people who were trying to get out of their driveway, and one lady was stuck and could not get out, and so stopped and helped her get out. And then when I got home, I realized that the side roads had not been plowed and likely were not being plowed until later, and it was really windy and a lot of drifting snow at my house. And I thought, man, a lot of people outside of kind of the main roads are going to have a hard time getting in this morning. So we thought we would connect with you via this Facebook Live, and we hope that you're able to connect with people around you this morning, whether it's your family or people, friends in your Connect group. You can give them a call or chat with them online, but to share in some community today. And we're doing this Facebook Live as a way to share in community together, and hope that you enjoy that and have opportunity to watch it again, as I mentioned earlier. If you are watching this video, I do want to remind you that at this point, we're still planning on youth group tonight. Pay attention to your emails. If you have youth, we will update that with an announcement via email later today. We anticipate that they were calling that the roads should get better throughout the day, and so I'm anticipating that we will have youth tonight. But if it does start to pick up in intensity, then we will try and let you know so that you can be aware of whether youth is happening or not. We also moved the potluck from this Sunday to next week after church, and so we are planning to connect with the dinner for Carson Moore as we introduce him to the congregation next week. He is with us, and I know several of you have had a chance to meet him and have been able to connect with him individually throughout this week, and that's great. I hope that you take time to get to know him over the next several months. Carson is from Kingswood. He's a senior there. He's going to be working with our youth, and he'll help out in a few other ministries as well as we kind of get him some broad exposure to church ministry. But he really feels called to be a youth pastor, and we are excited to have him with us. He's staying over at the White House, and we're kind of introducing him with a real winter here, but being up from New Brunswick, I don't think this is any surprise to him. So welcome to Carson. You'll get to meet him personally next week as he introduces himself in service, and then we also will have the time of fellowshipping together. If you're planning for the Guatemala trip in August, we also scheduled that meeting or rescheduled that meeting for next week, and that will take place right after the potluck. So we'll grab some food together, get a chance to fellowship with Carson and others, and then we'll head over to the library room for our meeting about Guatemala next week. So since there was no bulletin that you were able to pick up, if you do want to pick up a bulletin, we do have them. We did print some, but I would encourage you to pay attention. We'll send out the announcements that were in the bulletin via an email tomorrow so that you can have those and be aware of what's taking place as we move through the month of January here. So this morning I was planning to talk with us from the life of David in our Encounters series on friendship and a real friend. One other announcement I just remembered. If you do want to give, a great way to do that today would be to check out our online giving. You can do that through our webpage. And if you want to check that out, you can, opwc.org. You can go online there and give, or you can bring your gifts next week. We do appreciate that. And thank you so much for your support financially for the church. So I was saying I wanted to talk a little bit about friendship, and probably David and Jonathan is the most well-known biblical friendship that we can think of. And so our text for this morning comes from 1 Samuel chapter 20, verses 1 through 17. One of the vignettes describing an encounter that David has with his friend Jonathan. And so I'm reading from the New Living Translation, like I do in church on Sunday. And so beginning with verse 1 of chapter 20, 1 Samuel chapter 20. David now fled from Naioth and Ramah and found Jonathan. "What have I done?" he exclaimed. "What is my crime? How have I offended your father that he is so determined to kill me?" "That's not true," Jonathan protested. "You're not going to die. He always tells me everything he's going to do, even the little things. I know my father. He wouldn't hide something like this from me. It just isn't so." And then David took an oath before Jonathan and said, "Your father knows perfectly well about our friendship. So he has said to himself, 'I won't tell Jonathan. Why should I hurt him?' But I swear to you that I'm only a step away from death. I swear it by the Lord and by your own soul." "Tell me what I can do to help you," Jonathan exclaimed. David replied, "Tomorrow we celebrate the new moon festival. I've always eaten with the king on this occasion, but tomorrow I'll hide in the field and stay there until the evening on the third day. If your father asks where I am, tell him I asked permission to go home to Bethlehem for an annual family sacrifice. If he says, 'Fine,' you will know all is well. But if he is angry and loses his temper, you will know he is determined to kill me. Show me this loyalty as my sworn friend, for we have made a solemn pact before the Lord. Or kill me yourself if I have sinned against your father. But please don't betray me to him." "Never," Jonathan exclaimed. "You know that if I had the slightest notion my father was planning to kill you, I would tell you at once." And then David asked, "Your father is angry." "Come out to the field with me," Jonathan replied. And they went out there together. And then Jonathan told David, "I promise by the Lord, the God of Israel, that by this time tomorrow or the next day or the latest, I will talk to my father and let you know at once how he feels about you. If he speaks favorably about you, I will let you know. But if he is angry and wants you killed, may the Lord strike me and even kill me if I don't warn you so you can escape and live. May the Lord be with you as he used to be with my father. And may you treat me with the faithful love of the Lord as long as I live. But if I die, treat my family with this faithful love, even when the Lord destroys all your enemies from the face of the earth." So Jonathan made a solemn pact with David, saying, "May the Lord destroy all your enemies." And Jonathan made David reaffirm his vow of friendship again, for Jonathan loved David as he loved himself. Really powerful story there. And as we think about friendship, I'm just impressed by how much Jonathan showed his real loyalty and friendship to David. And I wanted to talk just a little bit about that. As you know, last week we were talking about David and Goliath and how David encountered Goliath and had this huge battle with him. And I hope that you've been facing your giants this week. And man, if you have some stories that you want to share about some giants that you faced this week in your life, I would love to hear that. I'd love to be able to share that with other people. So send me an email or give me a text or connect somehow with us to share those stories of how those giants fell in your life. That would be really encouraging to all of us, I know. And after David beat Goliath, then he went to live at the palace with King Saul and Solomon and the other people there, and he joined the military and began to fight the Philistines and became quite famous throughout the nation of Israel. And as he became more and more famous and his reputation increased, King Saul became increasingly jealous of David as well. And so life became kind of a little bit of a struggle for David because he was really popular with the people, but yet Saul was jealous of him, and he's working for Saul. He's living in Saul's house, and one day Saul gets so mad and so jealous at David that he literally throws a spear at him and tries to kill him. And David narrowly escapes and runs away. And that's right before we catch up here with this story with David and Jonathan. And so David's life is in jeopardy because of King Saul's anger and jealousy, and yet he has this great friendship with Saul's son. And so Jonathan must have been like, man, I'm in a tough spot here. His dad, he wants to be loyal to his dad. He wants to be faithful to his dad, and yet he also realizes that he wants to be faithful to his friendship with David. And so a couple things that I think we can learn from Jonathan, because he really is the epitome, I think, of a true friend. The first thing that I think we can learn from Jonathan is that with a real friend, you can be vulnerable. I think of how vulnerable David was. Like when he's running from Saul for his life, who does he go to? He goes to Jonathan. He goes to his friend, and he says, what have I done? What's going on here? He knew that he could really speak the truth. He could open up. He felt safe there with Jonathan. He didn't feel like he had to be, kind of sugarcoating things or kind of using political language. He could just be himself. He could be real. And Jonathan gave him that opportunity as a friend. A real friend allows you to come and to be vulnerable. They create this safe place. You can come and kind of just spill your guts without worrying about what they're going to think about you, without worrying that they're going to condemn you, without worrying that they're going to betray you. I mean, think of the risk David was taking. Jonathan is the king's son. And he goes to Jonathan. All Jonathan had to do was say one little word, slip up in one little way, and David's life would have been done, because Saul would have taken that and ran with it and chased David down to kill him. And yet he goes to Jonathan because he knows he can trust him. You see, a real friend is somebody that we know we can trust. We can trust with the details of our life. We can trust. We can make sure that we speak the truth. Karen had a really good friend who was the pastor's wife of the church that I grew up in, and the church that Karen grew up in, and so she and Missy, her friend, used to swap doing dishes and house chores and things like that with each other, because sometimes it's easier and more fun to do dishes at somebody else's house than at your own house, and and so they would swap things like that. But there are some chores that maybe you don't want your friend to do, like maybe your laundry, because who wants to fold somebody else's underwear? And yet that was how comfortable Karen and Missy were. Like they were fine letting each other do their laundry, letting each other, you could fold my underwear and put it away type of thing. And that's the level of vulnerability. That's the level of safety that David and Jonathan had. And that's a level of friendship that I think we should strive for, to create that type of environment between our friends. The second thing that I see Jonathan did for David was that he really took time to understand. He didn't just blow David off. He didn't just interrupt and say, no, it's not a big deal, I'll fix this or something like that. He listened to David. He really took time to listen and understand where David was, what David was going through, and didn't try to just solve it and fix it. One of the first things I learned in marriage is that a lot of times Karen wants me to just listen and not fix things. When we were first married, I would ask her, she'd come home from work and I'd be like, how's your day? And she'd start telling me something and explaining something about what's going on in the office or something like that. And she would get about halfway through her story, and then I would interrupt and start saying, well, you should have done this, or you could do that, and this would help here, and all of that. And you know what would happen? She'd get really frustrated. She'd be like, I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to listen. And, over time, I realized that if I just listened and took time to understand, the answer would become self-evident. Like she wouldn't need me to tell her the answer. She would discern that, and she would figure out, and she oftentimes would come up with better things than what I would think of in the middle of trying to fix her situation. And so when we take time to understand, self-awareness happens. Answers come out of our own conversation and dialogue, and then suddenly it's not, us feeling like, man, I never know what to do. It's people realizing, yeah, I can, if I process this and I have somebody that I can really listen to me and help me through this, I can figure out what's going on. And that's what a real friend does. They listen to understand, and in that understanding, then answers and solutions become more apparent. The third thing that I think Jonathan did for David was he was willing to sacrifice. Like he was willing to sacrifice for David. He put his reputation on the line. And I think that's one of the big sacrifices that oftentimes we have to make as friends. We have to be willing to put our reputation on the line. Think of, all the cool kids in school, and then you may be friends with somebody who's maybe not so cool in school, and then the cool kids start picking on that person, and what do? Are you going to stand up for your friend, that person that's maybe not so cool, or are you going to side with the cool kids because you're trying to become their friends? And a real friend is willing to put their reputation on the line. Jonathan put his reputation on the line for David. And he didn't do it with just the cool kids. He did it with his dad. Like, think about this. He went back to that banquet, and when his dad blew up because David wasn't there, Jonathan's like, man, David's a good guy. He's really helping you. David cares about you. David is fighting for you. David is a hero. Like, why are you so mad at this guy? Excuse me. And Saul literally gets so mad at his son that he throws a spear at his own son and tries to kill his own son because his son was standing up for his friend David. I mean, that is a friend that's willing to sacrifice. How much are you willing to sacrifice for your friends? Do you have a friend that is willing to sacrifice even their reputation for you? Who's willing to come and to stand up for you in places where people might not think that you're very cool or might not be very popular? Jonathan was that type of friend. He was willing to stand up for David. Proverbs 18:24 tells us a real friend sticks closer than a brother. In other words, they're willing to risk. They're willing to stand with you even when everybody else is standing against you. And the last thing that I think Jonathan does is that he blesses. Like, he protects and blesses David. He goes and tells David, listen, my dad really is after you. You're right. He's trying to kill you. And then he helps David get away safely. He resources him. He gives him some stuff he says, hey, take this, go. I'm going to continue to have your back here in the capital city, but you go. You need to get out of here because my dad really is trying to kill you. And he prays, listen to this prayer. May God defeat all your enemies. That's the pact in verse 17 that Jonathan makes with David. And in that pact, who his primary enemy was at the time? His primary enemy was Saul, Jonathan's dad. And yet, Jonathan was such a friend to David that he was willing to bless him, even though people close to Jonathan hated that he was blessing David. And so a real friend is willing to bless and protect the other friend. And so I would ask you this morning, what type of friend are you? Like, we all want a friend like Jonathan, but you know how you get friends like that? You be a friend like that. And so what type of friend are you? Are you a friend who creates places of safety for others where people can be vulnerable? Are you taking time to understand when people come up to you and say, hey, could I ask you something, or could I share something with you? Or are you really listening to understand, or are you there to try to just fix it and get them out of your day so you can move on with your schedule? Are you willing to risk your reputation for other people? Are you willing to stand up for them even when nobody else is standing with them, or people are even standing against them? Are you willing to stand with them and risk your reputation? And fourthly, are you willing to protect and to bless other people? Jesus is a great example of this, not just Jonathan. This is the way that Jesus lived his life, right? He was known as a friend of sinners. He was willing to risk his reputation. He was willing to bless people. He was willing to create a space of vulnerability and protection and safety around him. He was willing to risk his own reputation for us, so much so that he gave up his life for us. And so this week, I would challenge you to be a real friend, to be a real friend. And if you have a real friend in your life, take the time to say thank you for being a friend. Just like in the Toy Story video, right? You've got a friend in me. Who can say that about you? Who can say that about you? Be a real friend and take those friendships that you have, maybe that are just kind of on that acquaintance level or surface level, and go a little deeper this week. Take time to really dig into those relationships and to let God work through you to really bless somebody else, to protect somebody else, to encourage somebody else, to be that safe place for them. And when you do that, I know that God's going to take and bless you through that friendship. And that certainly happened in David and Jonathan's life. Let's pray. God, thanks for the way that you are a friend to us, the way that you gave your life, the way that you create places of safety for us, so that you were willing to risk your reputation, and you even gave your life for us, Lord. I thank you for the fact that you bless us and you protect us, Lord, that you listen to us, that when we come to you in prayer, you don't just zap things, but you let us process things and work with us, and through your Spirit bring out the answers and help us to be able to move forward in good and blessed ways. So God, I pray that we would be encouraged by that, knowing that you are our friend, but that we also would take that as a challenge to be that type of a friend to somebody else. And so God, I pray that you would equip each of us this week to think about the relationships that we have in our lives, and to ask ourselves the tough questions about, am I a real friend? Or have I been backing away from really being a true friend to the people around me? And God, give us courage to be true friends, real friends to those who are in our lives this week. I thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, hey, it's been fun being with you online today. It's been cool to see some of your comments and by way of emoji and things like that go floating by as I've been talking. And I hope that you have a warm day, a safe day, and that you are all able to just really enjoy the friends that you have, and step up and being a friend to others. Like I said, for those of you with youth group kids, just be watching for an update on that, and we will keep you updated on whether there's youth tonight or not. And we will send out other announcements tomorrow as we get back into the office, as long as things cooperate weather-wise. Thanks. It's been great to be with you again, and hope you have a great and blessed day. I'm going to be signing off, and hope you have, like I said, just a blessed day.